Good morning, everyone. This subject matter, I think is very important because many people talk about Buddhism in that way. They have questions in terms of thinking about it as a religion or as a spirituality. But of course, both of those two words are very loaded, meaning that they have multiple meanings. Different people think about religion in different ways, as they do with spirituality also. So it's a very complex issue, but in the next couple of talks that I'm going to be doing on this subject, I wish to sort of make it simple, but hopefully not too simplistic in my approach, But being too simplistic would not be that hard for me to do. But I'll do my best. And so I think usually when people think about religion and spirituality, religion means something that has to do with dogma, rituals, external things. Praying too much. If you're praying too much, then you're being religious. If you're praying, you could be praying to win the lottery. I mean, please, please. It doesn't matter who you're praying to, It could be Confucius, or it could be the Buddha, or God himself, bearded or not. But that's another matter. We won't go into that. Religion means something like that for a lot of people, I think. Praying is one. Ritual is the other one. And the ritual practices. So when you're religious, this is amazing. Because as religious people, sometimes you feast. And other times, you don't eat. You fast. Feasting and fasting. Huh? How ridiculous is that? From a non-religious point of view. But anyway, religious people, on this particular day, it's a feast day. So they gorge themselves. And then a balloon, And then they go to Jenny Craig afterwards. But anyway, the feast and, like having so much fun. And then they're told, now it's the fast time. So you have to fast. You don't eat anything. This is true of all religions, by the way, as you know. I'm mentioning all of these things, but I'll try to tie it up tomorrow. Because they're all part of what we think of as being religious. And it's true. And it's good. In many ways, it's good. And I want to say that Buddhism is a form of religion. I would say that. Unlike many other people, it's a religion. But being religious can mean many different things, and I'll try to explain later on. So, feasting and fasting and, that kind of thing. Even in terms of sexuality, same thing. In some contexts, religion says sexuality is to be celebrated. In another context, continence, abstinence is the thing. You abstain from everything. And that is true of our senses as well. Like what we see, smell, taste, and touch. On one level, almost all religions work on your senses, what you see, the iconography, the pictorial representations of great saints and what would be a female version of a saint? I don't know, saintess? Something like that. Anyway, you have got all these pictorial representations of things, and then you've got music, you've got incense, you've got candles, stimulating your senses. And then the same religion, not another religion, but the same religion which promotes this idea of indulging in the sensory impressions, also says, cut it out. Go deep into yourself. Don't get distracted by the sensory inputs. So that's the thing. And that's what we have to really look into. How to make sense of all of that. And of course, I cannot really do justice fully in terms of other religions. But what I will try to do during this time that we have together is try to sort of look at that from Buddhist point of view, and particularly from Tibetan Buddhist point of view. How to make sense of all of that. Now, I think you can see that the religious aspect is the external, and the spiritual aspect is internal aspect of the the whole religious phenomenon. Really, that's how we have to see it. Now, so many times I think people who come to Buddhism end up thinking that it is a spiritual path and we do not need to deal with the religious aspect. Even the ones who actually keep on doing the religious stuff say, Buddhism is nothing but a philosophy of life, or Buddhism is just a spiritual path. I hear that often. Even the other day I was watching a DVD, and this particular Lama, who hardly spoke any English, like myself, said, Buddhism is just a philosophy, And then a few minutes later, he was ringing bells and whatnot. But and calling the faithful. So I think, we cannot really sort of throw this word around, so liberally. Buddhism is just a way of life or philosophy. Buddhism does have a religious aspect, and there is a reason why we have that. What is wrong with praying? What is wrong with having um, having some kind of belief system which will sustain you? For example, like believing in rebirth or something like that. I mean, why should that be seen as something terrible? You know. So, secularization of Buddhism is not the answer. But that does not mean Buddhism, as taken as a religion, cannot have problems associated with it. Because, whenever a particular religious tradition becomes too focused on the external, then dogmatism, then fundamentalism, then racism and everything arises from that as well, as we know. But it doesn't have to be like that. You see, because in Buddhism, all the things that we do religiously is seen as means. It's a method. Religion is a means to attain enlightenment or spiritual realizations. So many times people get fixated on the means and forget about the goal, the ultimate goal, which is about inner cultivation. It's journey of the soul, you might say, Even though as Buddhists we do not believe in the notion of the soul, you could still call it journey of the soul. When you say somebody or other doesn't have a soul, we're not talking about some kind of that person not having a metaphysical soul. It just means that person doesn't care or whatever, Soul music, same kind of thing, I suppose. Usually talking about soulless nature of the other person, but while you yourself not soulless, I'm just kidding, whatever that means. But if you want to talk about that one, I'll discuss it with you later, okay? I was so singer. Anyway, I'm not going to go there. But serious, it is like that. So the more you go out from yourself, you become more religious. And the more you go inside, you become more spiritual. That really is the case, right? So, the more you believe in the veracity of your, ritual practices and incantations and invocations and evocations and so on and so forth, you're becoming more religious. And the more you go deeper into yourself and looking into yourself, you're becoming spiritual. But you don't have to denounce and renounce the religious aspect because it's necessary. In fact, it will aid you to become more spiritual if you pray, if you do all the rituals. That is the truth. I mean, even in a secular setting, when you want to go on a date, I mean, I use these examples these days because we are so secularized. If you want to go on a date, you would want to put on a nice dress. I'm not talking about myself. You know, I mean, you don't want to turn up in shorts and thongs or something. I mean, and the whole idea of candlelit dinner and whatnot. It's all ritual. It's ritual. You brush your teeth to make sure you don't smell bad, and and you, while you're with your partner, you make sure you don't release. Don't have to go. I don't have to go there, but continence again, continence. It's a good thing. So we're practicing all of these things all the time. So what's the problem in terms of extending that in terms of the religious domain in our lives? Why not? Because it, again, has the same effect. When we have a shrine and we have an altar and we wear certain garments, we feel different. It gives you a different feeling. And when you light a candle, when you light an incense, it makes you feel different. And when you chant, you feel different. You feel transformed. So you can use all of these things to help you and to transform yourself as a spiritual person. The only problem comes from thinking these things are the true thing. This is it. Like instead of thinking what they're doing for me to get to my destination, to my goal. That's what happens with a lot of religious people. We get fixated on our dogma, our rituals. So and so eat pork, and so doesn't eat pork, and so does this and that. I don't need to go into the details. I think you already know. But that's true. Even within Buddhism, that's true. So I think we have to think like that. It's not a question of either or. Either Buddhism is a religion or a form of spirituality. And as I said, religion has been seen as a very sort of negative thing, having a negative effect on a lot of people. And a lot of people who come to Buddhism also actually think like that Buddhism gives a different sort of answer to the whole issue. And I believe that is to be true, but we don't have to do that by saying Buddhism is not a religion. It is a religion. It is a religion which is very rich, and it's because of its religious dimension that we have Buddhist architecture, Buddhist literature, Buddhist iconography, arts, all kinds of things like that. If Buddhism was not a religion, we would not have Buddhist architecture. You'll have nothing to go to visit, in India, in China, in Vietnam, in Japan. Buddhism has contributed so much to all aspects of these cultures because of its religious element. So that's the thing. So we have to then think of the religious aspects of Buddhism as being an aid, not an end. The end is the spiritual aspect of Buddhism. It's nirvana, satori, whatever, you know? Sorry, not whatever, but what you want, what you wish to attain. That is the truth. So we have to then think like that, and if we think like that, then we can sing and chant, we can light incense, we can, feast and not feast, fast. Sometimes we fast, sometimes we feast. See, there's no contradiction. And that is the Buddhist way, seriously, because it's all about testing yourself. Buddhism teaches you to test yourself, because Buddhism caters for everybody. So, for majority of the people, the religious aspect is presented. You go to the temple, you make your offerings to the monks and nuns and whatnot, and you circumambulate, as we do in Tibetan tradition, around the stupa, going around and around until you're dizzy. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. And then you're thinking, oh, I'm getting higher, and realization. But I'm just kidding. They don't think like that, by the way. But it's like that, serious. So we can do all of those things, and we will benefit from doing those things. But we have to know that that is not the ultimate. But as I said before, people who think because they're not the ultimate, we should dispense with them. We should not pray, we should not circumambulate stupas, we should not chant, we should not sing, we should not light incense, we should not light candles. They're wrong. Really. That is wrong. And we become diminished as human beings by not doing that kind of thing. I really believe that, even in your own home, you feel better when you light incense, or you light candles, or you've got lights and things, and not when it's dark and things are disorganized, and ritual, basically. The ritual is a good thing, unless it becomes an obsessive thing. You don't have to brush your teeth 20 times a day, or something like that. But ritual is a good thing. So that's really what I want to say. Really, ritual, prayer, doing all of these things, and believing in having some kind of philosophy of life, not in the way that people have said. People, who say Buddhism is a way of life, or Buddhism is a philosophy. They're using that word very loosely. When I say, believing in philosophy, I mean actually believing in Buddhist philosophy. We have to use our reasoning capacity, our logic, things like that. In Buddhism, we really talk about it all the time. Usually, we do it in 3 different ways, according to Buddhism. One is the textual support. Did the Buddha say such and such a thing? And then secondly, we use our own reasoning capacity to make sense of things. And thirdly, our own experience. So in terms of philosophy, that's what we do with Buddhism. Huh? So it's an ongoing thing. Like we don't come up with the ultimate answer straight away. But by using those kind of, that kind of approach, first, looking at the authoritative literatures, Buddha, of course, was a special being. So if he said it, we would give that person more credence than your next door neighbor or something. Or your cheating husband or whatever. I'm sorry. and so it makes sense. And then, you look at what the Buddha taught, and you look at the coherence or consistency in the arguments presented. If the Buddha is contradicting himself, then it will leave you with a lot of doubt. Like, he says this in one context, and now he's saying something totally radically different. Doesn't happen. So that's the thing. And then through practice, we may actually end up having the kind of experiences that the Buddha talked about, which then reconfirms our own belief. What the Buddha, our own belief in what the Buddha taught. So that's the thing, okay? That is the thing. What to do? So my friends, at this point I think I have to leave you. Take your leave. So it's like that, okay? Serious. So religiosity, the aspect of religiosity of Buddhism is about going out and out. And if we get lost in that, then we become dogmatic or sectarian or whatever, My school of Buddhism is superior to yours, I'm this school of Buddhism and you're that school of Buddhism, or, you're Hindu or you're Christian or this and that, but that's not very helpful. But if we go too spiritual and ignore the religious aspect, so much is also lost, really. It's a truncated, is that the word? Truncated version, because, it has no life. When you don't pray, when you don't believe in anything, when you buy into the secular nonsense, and all you can think of is saving the environment or something like that, and then making that into religious passion, it's not very helpful. I hope I'm not being too controversial by saying that, but it sort of becomes like that though, we don't even know when the religious zest is creeping into our psyche, even without knowing it, Ardent communists, like religious people, And many people have said committed communist is a very religious person because, the Maoists, they have the hierarchy, they have the rituals, they have the uniform, and they have the Bible, which is Mao's red book, and then you march to the tune, and if you disobey, not only you're ejected from the party, but you could even lose your life. So that kind of thing. But anyway, it is like that though. The religious aspect is a very good thing because, as I said to you before, it helps us to work with different aspects of ourselves on the physical level, psychological level, and spiritual level. And it really does. Because without that, we would be only thinking about the mind. We would be thinking about Buddhism purely in terms of the mind. But it's only when we start to think about Buddhism in other ways, in religious terms, that we can think about Buddhism in relation to the body, speech, and mind, as we say, in Buddhism, by the way. So the material element, the material dimension of Buddhism is very important in terms of physical embodiment of what is sacred, for example. Even in terms of Buddhist statues and written materials and the Buddhist canon and the sacred literatures, all those things. It is very important. And Buddhist music is important. So we use all of that to transform ourselves spiritually. If we don't do that, then we get stuck and then we become dogmatic, we become fundamentalistic and sectarian and all that kind of thing, You do Zen practice, I'm Tibetan Buddhist, we are superior. We do all kinds of esoteric practice. We have gods that will that can kill anybody just by looking at them, kind of thing. They drink blood and they use skull cups as a drinking vessel. It's tremendous. It's this is true. We do. See, it's all for that. It's about transformation, and so I just want to really make that point. And tomorrow, I want to sort of refer to some people who have, scholars who have actually talked about these kind of things, and then I'll try to sort of go over what they say in relation to Buddhism and what I think, how we should look at these things. But to me, it's a very, very important subject because, as I said, even the people who say Buddhism is a philosophy, you still see them doing pujas and this and that, They can't help themselves. One moment they're saying, Buddhism is just a philosophy, it's just a way of life, you don't have to believe in anything. And the next moment, you see somebody, rushing to some lama saying, what do you think, lately I've been having a lot of problems and bad dreams. What do you think I should do, Is there some evil spirit haunting me? Things like that. Yeah. So anyway, I'll stop here. Thank you very much.